Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the program. I'm so glad to see you here, Messianic Lamb Network. I'm Dr. Robin Gould, and you are here for about an hour with me, maybe a little less today. I'm here a little bit early, which is fine because this will be rebroadcast and archived, so you can just watch this anytime. But I wanted to come in a little bit early today and give you a little bit of the unexpected because I want to make the point that life comes unexpectedly, like issues in life and things happen. One of the greatest things about the feasts of Yahweh are that they are not unexpected. Unexpected things may happen on these feasts, but there are rituals and there are things in place, preparatory things, place a specialized way for you to gain awareness. And this is a gift from our Father. So before we start, I want to remind you the future begins now. And as we are about to enter Yom Kippur, or the Arab of, so we've got that'll start tonight at sunset. We are here September 15th, 2001, and the Halal calendar counts this for this evening and until sunset tomorrow. And so Yom Kippur, whatever your past Yom Kippurs were or how you felt about it, the future begins now. And we can always learn something. We can always alter that trajectory of the paradigms we have to have a more meaningful fast, a more meaningful time. And that's what I would like to do, is to try to maybe come from another angle, come from the attachment lens. I am an attachment specialist. I'm a marriage and family therapist. And my perspective when I read the Bible is through an attachment lens, which tends to have a bit of a different ring to it. It in no way minimizes obedience. But I think you might be interested in maybe a couple things I have to say. So let's see if the words I'm going to share are going to encourage you, because that's what I want to do, is I want to encourage you. Okay, so here we have Yom Kippur. And I want to bring up, we oftentimes do the portion. And it's interesting because part of the portion, the Haftarah today, is just so perfect for Yom Kippur. But you'll notice, actually, I'm wearing white, and think of white, right? So we'll talk about the Haftarah because I want to talk about deliverance, and this is really an exciting piece. But a lot of people on Yom Kippur will wear white. It's a tradition, right? It's that whole spotless thing. And so I wore white today, and I do this every year when I do a broadcast, for Yom Kippur. And I think that's interesting that people stand in solidarity together and have this tradition. Now, it's not a commandment. Nothing wrong with tradition, as long as it doesn't supplant, the Bible, doesn't supplant the weightier matters of the Bible, especially. Then we're in good standing there with our community, which is really nice. And so I want to just start with the idea of Yom Kippur, because a lot of people struggle with Yom Kippur, not so much doing it, going through the motions of fasting and repenting and doing what they are told to do. But maybe sometimes people can struggle with how to think about it and how to conceptualize this and understand this. Now, I don't, have every answer to everything. I don't have any special wisdom, but I do know that when you view things through an attachment lens, you tend to get into those weightier matters and the relational aspect of these feasts and of the whole entire Torah and the whole Bible, because it's all about a relationship, right? This is what is the most important piece, is that relationship. And there are prescriptions for this relationship to do this His way. Because honestly, and we know this, you will never be healed doing it your way. It doesn't exist. Your way doesn't matter. His way matters. Now, what is His way? Well, that remains an argument between many people. We won't argue here, but we will bring a few points up to help us kind of put this together in our hearts, in our minds, in our spirits, and all of those levels that we mimic and mirror the temple, right? We are the temple. So I want to start, and this is not in our Torah portion today, but I always think of this with Yom Kippur. This comes up for me. It's Ecclesiastes 4:2. I'm going to read this. Now, Ecclesiastes is just one, I'm telling you, there's part of Ecclesiastes is where you just get this despondent Solomon who's got too much. And so life means nothing. I think that's really interesting because that's the opposite of what Yom Kippur is. It's about arriving out of all the luxuries, right? We don't wear the leather shoes. We're not, eating and getting comfort. We're not being, having those luxuries and just even food you wouldn't consider a luxury, but we're fasting. But Ecclesiastes 4:2, very specifically, it'll say this. So I find this to be very poignant. And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Okay. A three-strand cord is not easily broken. Now, in the therapy world, right, we can call something, it's very negative. It's called triangulating people, right? Where you get these three people and anyway, you can look that up and see what you think, but it is not easily broken. This is something that systems therapists deal with, triangulated systems, where there's alliances and they shift and it's unhealthy and toxic. In a good way, though, 3 is the number of resurrection and life, right? 3. It's very interesting. And so a 3-strand cord won't be easily broken. And that is so true. That's what you want, is you want 3. And so I want to combine this. I want to put this together with what's the most important thing. Yeshua tells us the most important thing when he's asked. He specifically asked in Mark 12:28 to 24 to 34, this piece here. And Yeshua quotes Deuteronomy 6:1-19. Actually, and you know what? Actually, it's the quotes are smaller. I'm actually reading you the full reference for you to get context. I want you to always get context when you're reading anything. But specifically, 34. And when the Pharisees heard that Yeshua had silenced the Sadducees, they themselves gathered together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with a question. So he's being confronted with a test. And they say, "Teacher," this is verse 36, "which commandment is the greatest in the law?" And so here's what he says. Yeshua declares, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it." So he's putting this on the same level in terms of how important it is. But there is a distinction of this is a different commandment, but just as important. Here's what he says. Love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Okay, so whenever I do things or think about things or read things or put a teaching together, I always have to back up and get that macro view of, are these things accomplished in what I'm saying? Does it rise to the level of being a 3-stranded cord that won't break? And here's the 3 things that the entire Torah, this is what the entire Torah is made of. Everything hangs on this, right? Allergies, my goodness. Okay. Love the Lord your God from a level of worship. Like they're basically saying with every cell in your body, right? Worship, love in reverence and in worship. And the second one is just as important, but they're making a differentiation. You're not worshiping your neighbor and yourself. You're loving them the same as you would yourself. Now that doesn't rise to the level of worship, but it's as important in terms of executing it as you're told as loving God to the point of worship with every part of you. So everything we do and say, everything we think about, every teaching we put together, every feast day, we have to think about it with this 3-stranded cord. And if one is missing, we're off balance, it breaks, it doesn't work. The feasts are about worshiping God. It's that prescription he gives us. And I mean it. He prescribes how to do these things. We do what he says. We do it his way. And we do that. We do that out of worship, right? Out of love, out of connection, of desiring to be close to him and to trust his ways. So that's him. We also, how does this benefit fulfill the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself? Well, the feast has to do both of those things as well. Or after you've worshiped and you're reverent, and that actually, it's not after, it's while, right? Then you're to love your neighbor and yourself at the same time. So what does that look like in a feast? Well, we're prescribed. We eat, we sometimes fast. And on one of our feast days is a fast day. We're feasting on something else. Redemption, right? And affliction is a gift. Not in an aesthetic way like the Colossians, not talking about that. But we'll talk more about this. And to love yourself. And what does that mean? It means to love yourself personally, I believe, is to know your identity. And if you know your identity, you can't help but love yourself because you'll know that the Creator made you. And because he is the good I am, and he is good, you can trust loving yourself is not bad. You were created by the Creator. You are the created. You are what he's proud of, right? Now, we don't always make him proud by our actions. Other people don't always make us proud or him proud, right? So we know we need this day to file bankruptcy. And I do see Yom Kippur in that way. It is the day to file bankruptcy. And I was chatting with some women last night about this. I was on the Rooted Cafe, and they do this thing called Tuesday Talk. I think you'd enjoy that if you want to look up the Rooted Cafe, ROOTED KAFE. Check that out. And we were just chatting with a bunch of ladies about this, and we're talking about the idea of Yom Kippur is so important that we run toward the Father with our debts, not from him. And Yom Kippur corrals us in this way, right? So when we think about Adam and Chava in the garden, right? When we think about that, what did they do? Well, that's the first story in the Bible about humans and how they act and what they do and why everything is the way it is. And that is the first story which tells you, base all your thinking on this story about people, because this is going to be your tendency, because people are people. People are people, right? So what did they do? They wanted to be like God. Now, that does not accomplish all three of these things. Worshiping him, loving your neighbor as yourself. This is trying to be him. This is competing with him. This is trying to be him in their lives. And they demonstrated that in more than one way. Not only did they want to be the judge, to eat off that tree of the knowledge of good and evil, where they would think, well, this will make me qualified to judge others. Well, let me tell you, we know we will never be qualified to judge others in this human experience, right? Never. But she got deceived. And here's the thing. It wasn't, the deception wasn't the big part to me. It was what she did. It was where she said to herself, and I'm picturing what she's thinking, I could just be me, the way I was made by my Creator, or I could disobey him and notch it up a bit and be like him. And then I can be a judge. Status, a new title, some more importance, which reflects a distrust in the Creator. Like, I'm not, quite enough. Well, that violates loving yourself. And then she hands it to her spouse. And were they loving each other as they did that? No. What's the encouraging thing to do? Trust dad. If he told you not to, the safe thing is to not do it. No. So they violated all three of the most important things by denying and rejecting ultimately their humanity, each other's sovereignty, their own sovereignty. Like, they let themselves be tread on by this serpent, but they wanted to be like God. They weren't accepting who they were as made by the Creator. They wanted to create their own image. They didn't want the way they were created and the image of Yahweh. They didn't want that. And so we can see how important it is for us to get a perspective that everything has got to fall in line with these all at the same time. Now, when it's only worshiping God and not loving people, that can be a real problem. When we're only loving other people while we worship God and we don't care about ourselves, that's a problem. When we only care about loving our neighbor and ourselves and it doesn't rise to the level of worship and obedience, we have a problem. These things are all together to accomplish and fulfill our destinies. And it's so vital that we get this. Yom Kippur this year, let this be the day you get this. Let me talk more about Yom Kippur, kind of help you understand the way I see it, okay? So let's take Yom Kippur and put it into this trifecta of absolute. Love God to the point of worship, love your neighbor, love yourself, okay? So we have number one, worshiping God would be what God needs. Now that word need might bother you a little bit. The word need. Does God need things? Well, I think the Father personally, and this is my opinion. If you can hear the lawnmower, I'm sorry. You can hear it through my coughing. Does God put himself in a place of vulnerability? So I believe he does. Now, I think that bothers a lot of people because they're not understanding what I'm meaning. Okay. The joy of the Lord is our strength. You hear me say this all the time. Joy. Now, I don't believe, and I'm a human and don't know what God knows, but in my human experience, joy is not something you can extract and solicit and then still be happy, right? Like joy comes from something other than you. Right? You get joy. You receive joy. Joy is generated in you based on something. So personally, I believe the Father needs, and in his way of needing, which is not the same as a human being's way. Okay, because we are not like God. We are created by God. So keep this in mind. We revere, which is to fear. We trust. We worship him. We don't declare things in his name and tell him what he's going to do. We don't talk to him that way. Okay, we know. Yes, we will invoke his promises, but that's different. We are respectful, and it doesn't mean we don't wrestle with him. That's in your private prayer closet where you're working through all the stuff. But this idea of God needing, God being vulnerable, God putting him in a position to want something that he's not in control of. Now, is he omnipresent? Yes. Is he omniscient? Yes. I believe he made himself into that position. Could he reverse it at any time? Of course, I'm sure God can do anything. But I don't believe he put himself in a position to have a bunch of robots so that when they came to his feasts, robotically programmed, he was like, yay, I'm joy. I have joy. Right? That's not what joy is. Now, I'm a human and I don't know everything, but we're not robots. Predestined doesn't mean pre-programmed. We are offered a destiny we can reject. And when we don't reject that destiny, because we're strong in the identity he gives us, he has joy. Very simple, but profound, right? Now, when Adam and Hava hid themselves, right? So they ate from the tree. They saw they were naked and they hid because they were ashamed. And the word ashamed is confounded. And you've heard me say this probably at least 30 times, right? Maybe more. I've been doing this a long time. They were hiding. So he comes to them, kings in the field, right? And he storms in. Actually, the word there is like he's going in to take what was his and what is still his. But they what are they doing? They're not running forward toward him with their debts, wailing for dad. They're hiding because they were confounded. I think what they were confounded about was their identity. And if they're confounded about their identity, which would be children of God, covered by God, protected by God, safe when they run to God with their failures. When they fail at that, they don't trust him. That denies him the glory of that he deserves. That he made human beings. And he is enough, more than enough. He's everything to take care of them and redeem them. And his goal is to restore all things. He tells us that's his objective. Our objective is to love God with everything to the point of worship and to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's what we do. And then, that's the title of the book. And then there's the index and how to do that. And he tells us how to do that. Here's how to love your neighbor. Here's how to love yourself. If you do this for your neighbor, then don't. But Yom Kippur comes around and we walk into affliction. So a lot of people feel like, okay, so I'm being punished for sinning. No. Nope. We are not on the stake. Remember, that was done by someone else. However, we do have to bring our debts forward. Actually, let me rephrase that. We get to bring our debts forward and to lay those on the altar, every single debt we have. File that bankruptcy. We come with humility. It's afflicting to file bankruptcy. We're humbling ourselves and saying, I have brought debt upon myself. I cannot pay it, but you can. And I'm sad because I did X, Y, Z 100 times. Over and over. I did this. I did this. I hurt this person. I failed in this way. Okay. Even beyond that, Yom Kippur is a sober, somber, melancholy time in a lot of ways because, we cry out like wailing animals for like this earth and its toxicity and the pollution, the moral pollution, the sadness. Like we get in touch with those threads of that pain, right? That we could never feel to the extent that he does. He made everything, made each person. And each time a person violates this relationship with him, it's hurtful. We get in touch with the damage and destruction of war, of selfishness, of cliques, of fakeness, of our false selves, all the things I talk about all the time, right? This isn't something we just talk about once a year. This is our daily life. Well, our daily life every year culminates to a point of bankruptcy. And so, we don't like to look at our debts all the time. Do you ever get bills that you feel like you can't pay or you don't think you have enough money and you're just like, you just kind of put it aside. You're like, I will look at that later. I can't even look at that right now. And this is the opposite of that. This is where all these debts, because when you file bankruptcy, you go in and there's a judge, right, in the court. And there's rules around, you have to bring in every debt in paper, like you bring it. And anything that's included that you brought in will be covered and you will be debt free. So you don't want to like leave them hidden all around where you just were like, I didn't want to look at that. No, in fact, you pull them out of every corner, under every book, under every coffee table, everywhere that you stuffed them so you didn't have to look at them. And you pull them out. And there's a lot of them, right? There's a lot for me, not going to lie. A lot of stuff, right? And I'm just finding all these papers everywhere and I'm just putting them in this basket. And it's like so heavy. And I'm taking several trips, right? And you bring this forward and you're just crying as you go. Like, look what I've done. The idea isn't that you're condemning yourself. You don't have that power. You're not the judge. You're bringing this to the judge to get relief. Because he's saying to you, today, you humble yourselves and and this is good. You trust me to humble yourself and you bring the debt that you've accrued to me. And what you're saying to me is, You are enough to cover all my horrible debts. When we think he isn't, we rise up to a standard above him. What? He's not enough. We don't even realize we think this way. But when we gather together our debt, we just start throwing it in and it starts piling up and we realize how many trips we have to take. And the more we like, oh, that's right. I even have this debt, like, oh, in my glove box. I got to go out to the car. I stuffed them in there. Oh, I left some at my mom's house. I ripped some up and threw them away, right? Some stuff's under the blood. I can't bring you a hard copy. So Yom Kippur is a big day. We get to be afflicted. We get to get in touch with that melancholy. We get to know, maybe even for a second, just one little second, even just like all the blood crying from the ground because blood has been spilled. We are afflicted for us. We're afflicted for the Father. We're afflicted for our brother. We're afflicted for this earth that was created to be such a beautiful place and has become a place of war and of all these problems. But we get to do this. And I want you to be encouraged in that. When you can empty this vessel out of debt and of guilt and of shame, right? You run to the Father. We stop hiding and covering ourselves up and thinking we can be God in our lives. Yom Kippur isn't about punishing you. It's about liberating you. And it's about us demonstrating our trust of who is our deliverer. That's the Haftarah, Samuel this week. Read it. He delivers you. You don't take fig tree, leaves from creation to cover up yourself, to find out who you are because you're confounded about who you are. Yes, we do that every day. We erect these false selves, whatever that might look like for you, and I have a bunch. And what are we doing? We're denying who we are, made in the image of God. We're denying who God made us to be. Therefore, we're weak. Where's his joy? There's no joy in that for him. When you are false, when you are not you, you are all of the ways that we are false, bossy and controlling and addicted and unkind and impatient and overeating and overindulging and in denial and just angry and awful and all the things that we do to cope with. I can't cope. And the Father was like, you were never supposed to have to, because I'm here all the time to help you. And we forget this. And we pile on these coverings. We put all these coverings all over ourselves. And it's interesting because the day of coverings, Yom Kippur, right? This is what this day is called, the day of coverings. It's when our debt is covered. But what's happening to us? We are uncovering ourselves, unlayering all this false. I can be my own God. I can solve my own problems. I can heal myself. I can be powerful. Right? That's what we do. So as we get uncovered, we put our debts out there, and then we start realizing our identity. We don't even know our identity. But we're not comforted in our comforts. We're afflicted. So who am I outside of all the things that make me feel comforted? Now, let me tell you something. On Yom Kippur, you will not be comfortable. But deep, deep, deep in your humanity, you will be comforted. Because you'll be reminded, lay it all down, peel off these mummy cloths, let them just fall off, layer after layer. Put that on the altar with your debt, of the deprivation he experienced, of the you he created you to be. While we went off and tried to be him in our life. And a lot of times we didn't even really, it kind of snuck up on us almost like that serpent questions us and it's like all of a sudden we've eaten from what? That does happen because we're not always right on the ball, right? We should be. We can be. But can we? I don't know, because nobody's perfect, not even one. Nobody is completely innocent, right? Nobody is. And the beauty is that the Lamb was slain at the foundation of the world. So he knew this. And his joy, right, is your strength. And your strength is his joy. What does it mean to be strong? Not on your own. You're the vessel. You're his vessel of love. To love the other kids and to love him. It's a beautiful picture. Yes, fasting can be afflicting and not being comfortable and having to really face all the false things that we have piled on our lives and just weighed it down. But we get to unleash that, just get rid of all that so that you're strong again and he's joyful. But it's this day where heaven and earth meet for that period of time. It's like this time portal of like, here's me and here's you. And the chasm between us will never be because there's always a remedy. So don't hide any of this debt, any of this false stuff. Do not grab any more fig leaves. The Father will cover you. He covers you. That word for atonement, for covering, it's the only time that's used in the Bible, that word. It's like, this is a special day. It's the highest holy day of the year. It's actually a pretty big deal to violate and not observe Yom Kippur. It's a big deal. Now, to how we observe it, let me speak to that a little bit because people have a lot of questions. When we think about the importance of this high holy day, we think of, okay, I want to do it right. The Bible says this. The oral law says this. My community fellowship says this. Robin said that. This said this. I mean, we can go back and forth. Okay. That can be really, really difficult. So what we're going to start doing before we feel confused and upset, let's start with this. Let's back up again. Let's back up and let's remember the 3 corded stranded cord. Let's remember that. Love God with everything you are. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's how Yom Kippur should be as well. So the first thing is we have to recognize ways we have sinned against our Father. We have been disobedient to his word and repent. We repent, which is to return. Shuva, right? We return. We return, right? So when the Father came, he stormed in and they're hiding. All they had to do was turn around and run this way. Run right into his arms, right? Shuva, return. Because remember the prodigal son? The older son's like, hey, I've been pretty good and you're happy about the squanderer here? And the father says, wait a minute. If you really knew my heart, you'd know that nothing is above the joy I get when my children run back to their dad, where they're safe and we're together. Like, that's what he wants. So the first thing is, in our macro view here, what does God need? He needs us to approach him in affliction and humility, to say, yeah, we get that. We did not do that right. We sinned against you. And then that goes into, as we're repenting and returning for disobedience, how that's extrapolated into offending and hurting and harming others, right? We have also violated that. We've gossiped. We've been jealous. We've neglected others. We've let others walk on us. We have not even wanted the best for our brother, right? We have all done this. And then that goes into ourselves, like about loving ourselves. And I touched on it just the sentence ago. We've allowed people to intrude on our sovereignty. That is only a place for the Creator. He is our covering, and we have allowed people to push us around. And because we didn't want the drama, and I'm the first one to say, I have gone through that. I don't want the drama. So I just let it happen. And then what do? I'm resentful. That's not loving my neighbor or myself. But loving myself is a commandment in my sovereignty of what I'm accountable to and responsible for and get to have by Him, what He instituted in me. I have to guard it and protect it like they didn't do in the garden. It's all about identity, my friends. If you know whose you are, you'll know who you are. You'll be strong, and there's the joy of the Lord. You worship Him in spirit and in truth. That's how we do it. Yeah. Sovereignty is not a new age topic. That's just getting sexy now. That's not what we're doing. We're going back to that ancient garden story where the Father said, okay, just being this close to this tree has exceeded your ability to know your identity. So you're going to find yourself and me out as you toil in the soil. And because I love you, toddler who doesn't know stuff, parent knows everything. It might look a certain way to you. You might think you're being punished, but you're being restored in the way that I restore. You don't get to tell me how I restore you. I tell you what to do. You do it. And that's how you're healed and restored. And it will look different for everybody on some level, right? So we're not comfortable on Yom Kippur, but we're going to be deeply comforted. And it's going to be weird because you have the king is in the field during this time of Elul, where this preparatory phase to kind of get reflective. Such mercy, right? Even before that awakening blast with the shofar on trumpets, right? We're like, wake up, right? Time to wake up. And then we have these 10 days of awe, which I'm going to say, if you haven't been experiencing awe, I don't know, because I don't know any of my friends or anyone I know or people in my circle that aren't like going through some awe right now. The earth is going through some awe. I mean, for sure, right? And it's hard. It's hard, particularly for the people that are more connected to those melancholy threads of the earth, the way that things happen. Like some people can kind of go along less impacted, and we need those people so things can run well. And then there's other people. I tend to be more on the sensitive side where it's like really upsetting to just see how heating pad, and I'm going to turn that down. But just to see how this earth is just kind of crumbly, just kind of in that place of like shaken, right? We're shaken. So some people just kind of are going to experience more of that shakenness than others. And that's not wrong. It doesn't mean some people aren't sensitive in the spirit and some people are oversensitive in the spirit. Stop judging. Walk on, my friends. Now, just have healthy relationships and healthy boundaries, and give as much as you can, and then stop when you can't give anymore. Okay? Love your neighbor as yourself. And so it's interesting because today in the portion, the Brit Hadashah portion that we've segmented out to read, it's interesting because it's John 6:26 through 35. And I think this is so perfect for this day of affliction of fasting, right? It's John 6:36, 35. And here's what it says. Yeshua answers them. So they had asked him a question. He says, truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you. Okay, he's referencing his physical aspect of himself. For on him, God the Father has set his seal. Then they said to him, what must we do to be doing the works of God? And he says, this is the work of God, that you believe in him who he has sent, right? So trust that God would not leave you hanging without an answer forever. And the answer was provided at the foundation of the earth, but here's the optics. So they said to him, "Then what sign do you do that we may see and believe you? What work do you perform? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, He gave them bread from heaven to eat." And this is what Yeshua says, "Truly I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." Jesus says to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst." So on a day of fasting, here comes Yom Kippur, the bread of not the stomach, the bread of life, the food for the ultimate you, right? The vessel made in the image of God, in relationship with him, operating in all three of these massive commandments that are so beautiful, right? Yom Kippur, the atonement, what covers you, what releases you from debt, releases you from the law of the husband, makes this covenant redeemed for this betrothal to happen. Yes, there we go. We're there. This day is part of that prescription, part of that bread. This day of not eating bread is your bread. Moshe didn't pull that bread down. The Father did. So the seal is on Yeshua. It's really interesting. So when we come from an attachment perspective of restoration, I hope you still can't hear. They're beeping and mowing the lawn, and there's like leaf blowers. Oh my goodness, my office is just right there with so much going on here. But from an attachment perspective of restoration, we don't enter into Yom Kippur lightly, like, "Oh, I'm just going to be comforted." No, we do need to really uncover all of this false stuff. We have to peel this. The serpent is an animal that sheds its skin over and over and over, right? I always find that really symbolic because we do that. Like, we have skins. I need to shed so many things, and I need a day to do it. And it's so comforting to know that my whole faith community is doing it too. And we're all kind of like today, like, "Oh, how much do I eat?" Because I know you're not supposed to eat a huge meal before Yom Kippur. It makes it harder, but maybe we're all having these questions. We're all maybe going to wear white tomorrow. We're all not going to wear leather shoes. We're going to be afflicted, right? At different levels, right? But from an attachment perspective of restoration, this day of coverings, which is the only time this word is used, so this is a special set apart day, right? We're getting in touch with, we're not showing up like this is easy. It's not. But we're showing up remembering that the big picture is to accomplish what everything the Torah is hinges on. Is we need redemption from how we've injured our relationships with other people and ourselves, and understanding how we violated God's laws, right? But we have to get back to that non-confounded state where we remember, what is the Father's prized possession? You are. So when you're hiding, have you ever looked for something that you really care about? Maybe let's just say you have this really expensive watch. You got it when you graduated from college, and that was 30 years ago, and you've always had it. It means so much to you. You love it, and you just can't find it. And you're panicking. You're like, "Where is that thing?" Right? Where is it? Where is it? How much more does the Father feel when he's made you to be with him and you're hiding under fig leaves? How much more? Now he says, "Where are you? Where are you? Why are you hiding from your answer? Why are you hiding from the medicine? Why are you hiding from the thing that is the only redemption you'll know? You can't redeem yourself with the creation I made for you. I made that stuff for you. You don't get to use it as an alternative to me. That'll damage your life, and it'll damage everything." So you're his prized possession. Get out of being confounded. On Yom Kippur, get realigned with knowing your identity. Stop hiding. Stop covering up. Unpeel, unravel. Get naked without shame because he's there. He created you. He loves you. He saw every single thing that happened between you and that person and how hard you tried, and you just couldn't do it any better than you did. You just didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden you're just like, you know what I'll do? I'll shut the door. I'll yell at them. Whatever I'll do. Maybe we do need to shut doors. Maybe we need to burn a couple bridges in a certain way and still stay in a positive place, but, reorganize our relationships. I'm doing that right now. I need to, because the festering things that I have to bring to Yom Kippur should be information for us. If my right hand offends me, I need to cut that thing off. Like, I don't need this. I don't want to always, any relationships where I'm constantly sorting out the power differential between me and them. It's like, I'm done. Because Yom Kippur is important. I got to unravel. I'm either too passive or whatever I am. I don't want to be too anything anymore. I just want to be a vessel of love for the Father. And that doesn't mean I'm a doormat. Okay. It's not good to provide people with a forum to step all over your face. That's just not right. You're his prized possession. He seeks and finds you. And on this day, you get to find you too, because he's going to shine that flashlight on you. And the bread you're going to eat might not be physical bread. It's going to be the life-giving bread that you need. So the you he made is your identity. And this is just an important thing as we're getting ready to close up here. I want you to look in your life as you approach Yom Kippur this year and remember to not forget. Okay, so remember to not forget the things in our life that we just allow to confound us about our identity. Every time, let's say you're on a diet and you go into the bakery, like that's an obstacle. Is there another street you could take and not go by the bakery and it's not so hard? Yeah, take that street. Okay. We have allowed certain things, certain people, dominating systems, workaholic stuff that causes us to neglect better things, whatever. Reorganize. Restitution comes in many forms. It might be apologizing to people, but let's try not to do it again next year. But also end things that need to end, like walk away from things that you're just like, wow, this is just such an energy sucker. Like this is just, absorbing so much of time. I need to be ministering to others, resting for myself, worshiping the Father. It's like, it says, don't even worship me until you go make up with your brother, but you've got this person and they're just constantly, or maybe they're unpredictably, which is worse, intermittently just kind of slamming me in the face with whatever. And you're sorting out and you're sorting out and you're sorting out. It's like, start looking at a theme here. What are you bringing to Yom Kippur every year? Yeah. What can you change here? Right? Let's get afflicted to the point of change. This isn't about punishment. This is about transformation. This is about redemption. Getting in touch with the grief of the Father. Getting in touch with every drop of blood that's hit the ground on this planet. Just trying to be a part of this whole process because you are the most important thing to God. So we're responsible to guard and protect our sovereignty. We have not done that. It has not led to good things. Some of the ways we have prevailed. Think of times you've prevailed. Try to replicate your actions and do that again. So when you are around a person and a false self, let's talk about as we are redefining relationships right now and how we interact in them, which is usually a very primary stack of debts, right? Like that's the most common stack of debts people are bringing in. It's like how we've treated other people and how we have been, and a lot of that sorting out is because they have mistreated us and we have let that happen. Because religion teaches us passivity, where the Bible does not teach passivity. at all. I do not believe the Bible teaches passivity at all. Now, there are times where we say nothing. That's not passive. That's harder than sometimes than speaking up, right? So my basic rule of Robin here is if I'm tempted to speak up, don't. If I'm not tempted, speak. Like if I'm tempted not to speak up, speak up. If I'm tempted to be quiet, or speak out or yell out, just back up. So generally, when something's going on like that, and I feel a temptation to do something, just don't do that. So each situation will be different. And Yom Kippur is that day of coverings, and it's like, okay, what am I encountering in my daily life that continues to cause me to sort and sort and sort and sort and sort? That might be something you need to redefine. Tshuva is about returning to the Father and not going back to our old ways. Now, obviously, we are going to continue to make a lot of the same mistakes. We're human and we're not perfect. We don't try to do that. We don't want to do that. We want to walk on into our destinies transformed and always growing, right? That's what we really need. Yom Kippur is not a time you're backed into a corner to feel horrible. It's a time you get to approach that throne, into that very deep place, that Holy of Holies, right? And you get to bring your debts. You get to become liberated from that. You get to have this 24-hour space of time to uncover, unwrap, and get back to that kid that you are with God, right? And the more mature, the more like a kid you get, the more mature you are, because it's really mature to know what you don't know. And that's what kids just don't know stuff. But they have some instincts and they have love and they're cute. I mean, there's so many things about kids, right? But they don't think they can be their parent. And then they reach that age where Stephen Hawking should be carrying their bags as far as they're concerned. And I was never a fan. May he rest in peace. But I will say, because his belief system was discouraging to the creator, or to people about the creator. But what I'm saying is when kids reach that challenging age where they're always in competition, right? Yeah, right. It's always this interesting thing where they age out of that and then they have their own kids and they say, oh, I was so hard on you, mom and dad. And guess what? You were right. Like, that's really hard. Parenting is really hard. It hurts. Well, our Father is an emotional God, and he is not immune from pain. He has not let himself be immune, or he would have no joy. He would have no joy. He would have nothing for him. Everything's his. But what would be for him? Right? He can't take your devotion. You give that. And he enjoys that. So Yom Kippur is something we get to do. Yom Kippur is something that we need to do. You will not be healed doing your own thing. You need to do his thing. Now, if you have a medical condition, I really want to address this because people get very upset. If you have a medical condition and you have to take, let's say, a medication that requires food, you can't go without liquids. You have a blood volume issue, or you've struggled with sickness this year, and a 24-hour fast would be harmful. So remember this. You just do what you can do. Okay, so one strategy I know of some people can do is where they can't fast, right? They can't go without meals. They have to take medication, or there's some reason that they can't. And what they would do is like, they just wouldn't really eat the foods they enjoy. So like an example of that would be like, if you think of a plate of like white fish and like cauliflower steamed, like that plate of white, not appealing stuff, like you're eating, but it's not really appealing. But you're still able to take your medicine and get nourished in the way you need to, still feels afflicting. So it's just an idea. Some people, they just can't go without water. I mean, there are diseases people have, or just different things. So it's just not about you having to completely destroy your health. I mean, this is about what is going to help you unravel all these false things and get in touch with these debts, get in touch with the Father's feelings about all of the pain of the earth. Like, this is where we unite with him in this way, and for all of the brethren and for all of the earth, right? So that's where I wanted to go today. I wanted to remind you, it is a privilege to run to the Father with your debts, and we are grateful. And it is afflicting It is transformative. It is helpful. It is beautiful. It is how we heal. And we can start again. Okay? We can start again on a fresh slate. So go and look under every cabinet and every book, behind every door, and find your debts. Don't ignore your debts. Bring them all in for this bankruptcy. Bring it in. Get clear. You're not going to be punished. You're going to be restored. Don't run from him. Run to him. He is your answer. No matter what the question, he is the answer. So I hope this encouraged you. I hope you have a meaningful past. And always remember, the future begins now. Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.